Well, Budget 2023 has delivered, and it's delivered on industry's expectations. Let me go across to the chiefs of FICCI who join us now. Subhrakant Panda, Sanjiv Mehta, Anish Shah. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on the program. The big ask, the single biggest ask for industry was government Capex, a 33% higher allocation on government Capex. Of course, the other big ask of industry was predictability and stability, and that is what has been delivered on. The expectation of more PLIs, that hasn't come through. The expectation of that 15% concessional tax rate being given another 5 years, that hasn't come through. But on balance, whether it's personal income tax or infrastructure development, the finance minister has done what was expected of her. Sanjiv Mehta, your first thoughts on Budget 2023 and what it means for the Indian economy.
You're absolutely right, Shireen. It's a fabulous budget. It's a budget where the primacy of growth remains. It is a budget where the focus is on inclusive and sustainable growth. It is a budget which balances the long term with the short term. It is a budget where you look at from a macro perspective. It is not just spending on Capex, but also the method in which the government has gone about doing it, ensuring that we are on the path to fiscal consolidation. I think all this augurs tremendously. The focus on digitization, the focus on taking digital to rural India, the focus on bringing private sector and public sector, be it in pharma when it comes to R&D or AI hubs. These are all the things which the country needs, and I'm so glad that Madam Sitaraman has done a fabulous job of bringing the science and art of budgeting to a near perfection under very challenging circumstances. It's a budget, I believe, Shireen, which indicates not just the resilience of the economy, but also the confidence of the budget maker.
Subhrakant, let me address that same question with you. Does it move the needle there as far as corporate India is concerned, unleashing the animal spirits that we've been waiting for?
Oh, absolutely, Shireen. We have talked several times over the past few days. And I think the single biggest expectation from industry was that this would be a growth-oriented budget and that there should be a substantial outlay for infrastructure so as to keep the momentum going. And and the finance minister has delivered, and how. I mean, in all honesty, I think the expectation was that after last year's 35% increase in the allocation, that it would be a somewhat muted allocation this year. But she's really, stepped up to the plate by allocating 10 lakh crores for infrastructure, for Capex, amounting to 3.3% of GDP. And if you take into account grant in aid to states, etc., that number then goes up to 13.7%, which is 4.5% of GDP, which is a substantial number. And the beauty about all of this is that it translates all throughout all sectors of the economy. It'll be all pervasive and provide a significant opportunity to crowd in private sector investment as well. And equally, I think the focus on MSMEs is something which is really praiseworthy, because what we are looking for is not just growth, but sustainable, resilient and inclusive growth. And that cannot be achieved without MSMEs being looked after. So a 9,000 crore allocation to the credit guarantee scheme, which will enable about 2 lakh crores of credit for MSMEs, interest rates to be brought down by 1%, I think are significant steps, as is the caring side of the budget in terms of the Vivad Se Vishwas scheme, where MSMEs who were not able to deliver during the pandemic and have had their monies forfeited will be able to get the bulk of it back. I think all of these are significant, and I'd just like to add one more point, which is the credibility of the budget, both in terms of assumptions as well as the fiscal consolidation glide path, where 6.4% has been achieved for the current is projected to be achieved for the current year, 5.9 for the next financial year, and eventually below 4.5% by FY26. So all of this, adds to the credibility of the entire budget making exercise.
Well, yes, I think that credibility of the numbers point has been made through the morning today, and emphatically so. But Anish Shah, if you can hear me now, my question to you, for the rural economy, for demand, for the auto sector specifically, we saw some measures being announced, for instance, as part of the green focus of the budget and separately as part of the scrappage focus of the budget as well. What does the budget really do? Does it move the needle significantly?
So I would say that this is actually an outstanding budget. It covers a number of areas. It's disciplined, it's green or sustainable, it's growth-oriented, and it's inclusive. And that's difficult to achieve all in one budget. The specific measures that have been listed for green, for example, around auto scrappage, around transition to green energy, will go a long way in reducing emissions for us. This is a budget that looks at the longer term. As the Prime Minister said, we're looking at 2047 and looking at how to set India up for success in the long term. And I think that's a big positive in this. In the short run, the focus on rural and the number of initiatives around that will help boost the economy. As we think about combating a potential recession, I think this places us in a very good position. I think we are 3 steps ahead. We were 3 steps ahead in taking various increases in interest rates, etc., to try and combat a potential inflation scenario. And I think we're 3 steps ahead now in terms of combating a potential recessionary scenario.
I would imagine that we will need to see the fine print, Anish, but as far as the scrapping policy is concerned, she did talk about the fact that the centre will continue to support not just replacing central government old polluting vehicles, but will also incentivize the states and support the states. What do you take away from that?
I think there's a lot more to be done on that. I think with the scrappage policy, it was a good start. This is one more step in that direction. But I think we need to see a much tighter regime around scrappage, which will really impact emissions in a much better way. So we welcome this step forward, but I think there's still more steps to be taken in that journey.
Okay. Sanjiv Mehta, I want to come back to you in terms of demand and specifically rural demand now. So if you take a look on the rural budget side, it's actually down about 2%. But on schemes like NREGS, which have been pointing out a demand-driven scheme, so there is a lower allocation versus the BE. But on balance, between what has happened on the personal income tax as well as the focus on higher Capex, etc., do you believe that this will aid consumption as well?
Yes, when you're talking about Manrega, even last year the budget allocation was lower than the previous year. And we had asked Madam Finance Minister that if the demand was more, what would the government do? And last time she was absolutely clear that if the demand is more, the government will provide more funds. Yeah, so that's one point. But when it comes to demand, Capex has a multiplier effect, as Anish and Subhrakant rightly said. The second important bit is the focus on MSMEs. Again, if MSMEs grow, if they get adequate credit, and also from a long-term perspective, the repository of information that the government is creating, that will enable credit availability for the MSMEs. Then the focus on agriculture, bringing in data and technology to agriculture, to health services, creating AI hubs. So if one looks at it from this lens, I would believe that this should augur well for the demand as well. And if the commodity prices are kind to the country and they do start coming down, then it will give a further fillip to consumption.
Subhrakant Panda, the mood across industry buoyant. I believe you're quite the singer. Do you have a song that sums up the budget mood?
You fell for what Sanjiv had to say when we were not on air, haven't you? No, I don't. I don't really have a song for the occasion, but I must say that the economy will really be on song with the sort of budget. Well, all I can say is that the economy will likely be on song with this sort of a budget, which is bold, which is balanced, which is progressive, and really delivers on multiple fronts, which is what we were hoping for. And I must commend the Honourable Finance Minister for coming out all guns blazing And I think there's much to be gained from this budget as far as corporate India is concerned. Let me also dwell a little bit on the ease of doing business, where besides the compliance touch points and the outdated rules and regulations which have been taken off the statute books, but the reference in the budget speech to the unified filing portal, as well as the use of PAN as a common business identifier, I think these are all again the starting points of significant improvement in as much as ease of doing business is concerned, which will certainly stand us in good stead.
Anish Shah, on the manufacturing aspiration, on India being a manufacturing magnet, the expectation was that maybe there would be more PLI schemes, etc. That hasn't happened. There have been further allocations and some customs duty revisions specifically for the electronic sector, etc. But from a manufacturing perspective, how significant has this budget been in terms of changes?
The most significant part is the focus on capital expenditure, because that will have a significant impact on manufacturing. And while the headline numbers talk about 10,000 crores and a 33% increase, I'd again echo what Sanjiv and Subhrakant have said around the multiplier effect, because it's literally a 3x impact. And the other part that I think is striking is this is the longest period of increases in capital expenditure that we've seen in India's fiscal history. We've gone from 1.67% of GDP in 2019-20 to 3.3% of GDP. And that is a significant step forward that augurs very well for manufacturing.
Right. Sanjiv Mehta, Subhrakant Panda and Anish Shah, always a pleasure. Many thanks for joining us here on CNBC-TV18 with your take on the union budget and what it means as far as the economy is concerned.